Maren never thought her life would implode in the time it took a hotel elevator to reach the 12th floor. Funny how betrayal can show up quietly, without fireworks, without screams, without even the courtesy of knocking. One swipe of a room key, one stupid half-laugh floating through the door, and suddenly she was no longer a wife but the punchline to someone else's joke. She should have turned around. She should have walked away. But instead, she stood there in her knee-length coat and her stage-still makeup, watching the love of her life tangled up in someone else. Her husband didn't even flinch. He just blinked, stunned, like she was the one cheating by walking in at the wrong time. After that, she didn't cry. Not once. She simply said, in a voice calm enough to scare even herself, "Don't stop because of me. I'm just here to get the rest of my life back." And she did. She walked out of that hotel and stepped into the cold New York night, the streetlights reflecting off the wet pavement, the wind slicing through her coat, and she felt more awake than she had in years. The ache was real, yes, but beneath it was something far more dangerous. A spark. A realization. She had been living a life chosen for her. From the songs she sang on stage to the routine dinners with her husband's business partners, everything had been curated, polished, and filtered for success. He chose the house. He chose the furniture. And she, quietly, had learned to choose silence. Until now. Her phone buzzed in her coat pocket. A message from her manager. "You were amazing tonight. The label wants a meeting Monday." She laughed bitterly, the sound carried away by the wind. Amazing. Stunning. A rising star. Funny how everyone could see the stage version of her, the one with sequins and perfect vocals, but nobody noticed the woman who went home to sleep next to a husband who couldn't even love her exclusively. She needed space. Air. A life that belonged to her again. So she started walking. Somewhere between the hotel and the empty apartment still smelling like her husband's cologne, she ended up at her favorite late-night spot. A small jazz bar with gold lighting and the kind of piano that could make a murderer cry. The place was almost empty. Just a few older couples and a bartender wiping glasses with a rag that looked older than the city itself. She took a seat, ordered a whiskey, and removed her wedding ring before the glass hit the table. The bartender noticed. He raised an eyebrow. Bad night, worst night. She didn't explain further. She didn't need to. Then, before her ice had even melted, someone slid onto the stool next to hers. "You look like someone deciding whether to unleash hell or write a song about it." Maren turned her head slowly. The woman sitting next to her was gorgeous in that effortless, "I woke up like this way." Shoulder-length blonde hair, leather jacket, eyes that were too kind for the hour. She was smiling, not mockingly but curiously, like she actually wanted an answer. "Both sounds appealing," Maren replied. "Oh, definitely. But songs leave fewer witnesses." Maren huffed out the first real laugh of the night. "I'm Harper," the woman said, offering her hand. Maren shook. Maren woke the next morning to soft Tennessee sun spilling through gauzy curtains, a warmth that felt nothing like the cold hotel hallway that had shattered her life. She stood in the small kitchen of her rental apartment, barefoot on the hardwood floor, making coffee she knew wasn't nearly as good as the overpriced drinks at the bar where she first met Harper. But for the first time in years, the stillness around her didn't scare her. Silence wasn't a threat anymore. It was an invitation. Her phone buzzed again, just like it had every morning for a decade. Managers, agents, PR reps, reminders of interviews she wasn't doing, calls she wasn't taking. She watched the screen light up one message after another, then turned it face down on the table. She had spent years answering everyone but herself. Not today. She grabbed her notebook, walked out to the small balcony, and let the warm Nashville air wash over her. Birds, traffic, someone's dog barking, a soundtrack more honest than the polished perfection of her curated city life. She sat down, closed her eyes, and the lyrics came. Not about betrayal. Not about heartbreak. About rebirth. She wrote until the sun shifted and the shade cooled her shoulders. And she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Pride. She could write her own story now. Nobody else owned her voice. Halfway through scribbling a chorus, a soft knock came at her door. She frowned, confused. She wasn't expecting anyone. Maybe a package? Maybe the landlord? She opened the door and her heart tripped once, then twice. Harper stood there, holding 2 iced coffees and the kind of smile that could talk someone off a ledge. "Good morning." Maren stared. "I did not give you this address." Harper shrugged casually, stepping inside as if they had been doing this for 20 years. In my defense, you did not give it to me either. And I bribed the coffee shop barista with a $10 tip to tell me where the Nashville songwriters stay when they're hiding from emotional collapse. Maren blinked. You seriously? Absolutely. And weirdly, didn't feel like an invasion. It felt like someone finally cared enough to show up. Not for music. Not for publicity. For her. Harper handed her one of the cups. I guess that you take coffee with too much cream and a dangerous amount of sugar. Maren sniffed the cup. Perfect guess. Not a guess. Just reading the room. They sat on the balcony, sunlight pooling around them, coffee sweating on the table. Harper leaned back in her chair. So, on a scale of 1 to dramatic breakdown in a mall dressing room, how are you doing today? Maren smirked. A solid 6. Maybe 7. I wrote lyrics. That's huge. Harper nodded. What kind? Honest ones. Harper didn't ask to read them. She simply nodded like that alone was worth celebrating. After a few minutes of quiet, Harper spoke again. I've been thinking about what you said the other night. Maren's stomach tightened. She wasn't sure she wanted to revisit that moment. Not because she regretted it, but because saying the truth out loud still felt like standing on a frozen lake waiting to hear if the ice would crack. Harper continued gently, I want you to know that nothing about what you told me changes anything between us. What you're discovering is about you, not about who you owe anything to. That landed harder than Maren expected. People usually heard confessions like hers and immediately leapt to assumptions. That she must be looking for someone else. Rebound. Validation. Replacement. But Harper didn't. Maren wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, letting the cold seep into her palms. I'm afraid. Of what? That I'm too late. That I spent so long pretending I don't know how to even start living as who I really am. Harper tilted her head thoughtfully. Maren, you're not late. You're right on time. You learned something essential when you were strong enough to carry it. That's not failure, that's wisdom. Maren looked at her, throat tightening. She didn't realize she had needed someone to say that until she heard it. Harper grinned suddenly. Besides, do you have any idea how many older queer women didn't figure themselves out until they watched a single lesbian character on TV in the 90s? Maren snorted. Oh great, I'm joining a whole club. A fantastic club. We have jackets. An emotional trauma. Maren laughed so loudly a family walking below looked up. It had been a long time since humor felt natural instead of forced. They talked for hours about songwriting, childhoods, crappy first apartments, favorite records, worst heartbreaks. Harper revealed she grew up in Boston, played guitar in dive bars at 16, and once slept in a recording studio for a week just to get access to a microphone. Maren confessed she missed eating cereal for dinner and hated red carpet dresses because sequins were tiny shoulder stabbers. Harper nearly spit out her drink laughing at that one. Eventually, Maren glanced at the time. I have to go to the studio this afternoon. I took a small private booking to start recording new material. Harper sat up, eyes shining. You're recording already? Maren shrugged, almost shy. I have something to say now. I don't want to waste the moment. Harper stood and swept her hands dramatically. Go make music that rips open the universe. Maren lifted her coffee. I'll settle for making something honest. Harper smiled. Sometimes that's exactly the same thing. Maren hesitated before asking, you want to come with me? Harper blinked, surprised. You're sure? Maren nodded. I don't want to walk into that alone. Harper's voice softened. Then I'd be honored. The drive to the studio was quiet but comfortable, the kind of silence that didn't need to be filled. When they arrived, the small indie recording space felt nothing like the polished corporate studios Maren was used to. No assistants, no executives, no pressure. Just a microphone, a piano, and 4 walls waiting to hold the truth. Maren sat at the piano while Harper leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching not like an audience but like a witness. Maren played the first chords of the song she'd started that morning. Her voice trembled at first, unused to singing something so vulnerable. But then it steadied, grew, bloomed. The melody wasn't perfect. It wasn't polished. But it was real. A song about a woman who lost herself trying to make the world happy. A woman who believed silence was strength. A woman who chose herself at last. When she finished, the room was still. Marin stared at the keys, afraid to look up. Afraid she'd see disappointment or pity, or even polite praise. Instead, Harper whispered, "Marin, that's the most alive I've ever seen you." Marin swallowed hard, eyes burning. "I didn't know I had it in me." "You always did. You just never had the space to hear it." Something shifted inside Marin then. A click. A settling. Like a puzzle piece sliding into place. She wasn't broken. She had simply been unheard. For the next 3 days, she returned to the studio with Harper in tow. They ordered bad takeout, worked late into the night, scribbled ideas on napkins and coffee sleeves. Marin recorded 5 songs, each one more fearless than the last. And every time she finished a take, she would turn and find Harper watching her with a look that wasn't admiration or infatuation, but respect. Respect. Something she had never been given in her marriage. Late one night, they walked out of the studio into warm air and the distant hum of traffic. Harper stretched her arms above her head. "If you keep writing like this, the world doesn't stand a chance." Marin laughed quietly. "If I keep writing like this, I might finally stand a chance." Harper looked at her, eyes soft under the streetlight. "You're changing right in front of your own eyes. Do you know how rare that is?" And then, because it needed to be said, "You're becoming someone who doesn't apologize for existing." Marin felt the words settle into her chest. She was learning how to occupy space. A car drove by, blasting music, snapping the moment. Harper shoved her hands into her jacket pockets. "Want to get something to eat? At midnight?" Marin teased. "I know a diner that makes grilled cheese so good it could solve international conflict." "That's a bold diplomatic claim. Come on. Worst case, we get food poisoning and die dramatically." They walked to the diner, small, neon lit, with red vinyl booths and a server who called everyone sweetheart regardless of age or gender. They ordered grilled cheese, fries, and milkshakes like teenagers avoiding curfew. They talked until 2 a.m., laughing until their stomachs hurt. For a moment, life felt like something simple and golden, untouched by betrayal or reconstruction. Then Harper went to the restroom, and Marin's phone vibrated. Her husband. She stared at the screen, the name flashing like a warning light. For a moment she considered ignoring it. But then she made a different choice. She answered. "Marin." His voice was strained, exhausted. "We need to talk." Her heartbeat didn't spike. Her hands didn't shake. "About what?" "About us. There is no us." Silence. Then tight and cold. "You blindsided me by leaving." Marin almost laughed. She pictured him in the hotel room, the other woman still in the sheets, the nerve of him believing she owed him grace. "You cheated." A sharp inhale. "That was a mistake." "One mistake you repeated for months," she corrected calmly. He started to say something, maybe an excuse, maybe a guilt trip, but Marin cut him off. "Listen. I'm done living a life that doesn't fit me." He finally asked the question he should have asked years ago. "Is there someone else?" Marin thought of Harper, bright laughter, patient eyes. The way she listened like music was something made of people instead of notes. "No," she said. "But there is finally me." She hung up before he could respond. Harper returned and sat across from her. "Everything okay?" Marin nodded slowly. "I think, for the first time, it is." Harper didn't press, just smiled and stole one of Marin's fries. In the weeks that followed, Marin kept writing, kept singing, kept letting herself exist loudly. Harper was there, often not in a way that overshadowed Marin's journey, but in a way that made the road less lonely. Their friendship deepened, rooted in honesty, music, shared late-night confessions, and the unspoken hum of something neither was ready to name. Not yet. One afternoon, Marin was sitting cross-legged on the floor surrounded by lyric sheets when her phone buzzed again, this time from her manager. "The label wants a preview of whatever you've been working on." She stared at the message. The old Marin would have panicked, worried about charts, expectations, brand image. But she was someone new now. Someone who could choose. She typed back. "I'll send them something when I believe in it, not when they demand it." She hit send before she could rethink it. Harper, who had been tuning her guitar on the couch, looked over. "Professional rebellion? Personal independence?" Harper grinned. "Looks good on you." Later that evening, they took a walk through Centennial Park. The sky was going purple, the air warm, kids chasing bubbles near the pond while couples strolled hand in hand. Marin paused near a fountain, watching the water spray into the air like splintered diamonds. Harper stood beside her. You look like you're about to ask the universe a big question. Maybe I am. Harper waited, quiet and open. Marin took a slow breath. Do you ever worry that you'll miss the life you were supposed to live because you spent too long in the wrong one? Harper answered without hesitation. No. Because the moment you step into the right life, you realize none of the old one fit you anyway. Marin's eyes stung unexpectedly. You make everything sound simple. Not simple, Harper corrected. Clear. There's a difference. They walked again. Their hands brushed once, just once in that accidental but dangerously electric way. Marin felt the jolt all the way to her ribs. Harper didn't move away. Neither did she. Something was changing. Something quiet but undeniable. It wasn't lust. It wasn't infatuation. It was recognition. Two lives orbiting closer. Two hearts learning the sound of each other. And yet neither rushed it. Because Marin still had one more step to take before she could truly love anyone. She had to fully love herself first. That night, instead of going to bed, she stood at the bathroom mirror. Her reflection stared back, not perfectly styled, not performance-ready. Just real. She whispered to herself, I'm allowed to live as who I am. It wasn't a performance. It was a promise. She went to sleep not as the wife she used to be, not yet as the woman she was becoming. But as someone standing on the threshold of her own life. Tomorrow the next step would begin. The next morning Marin woke with sunlight touching the wall like someone had gently painted the room in gold. She stretched, half expecting the anxiety she used to wake with. The dread of the day, the fear of disappointing someone, the pressure to perform a life she didn't actually want. It wasn't there. Instead, her body felt steady. Her mind felt hers. She brewed coffee, stood by the window and looked at the quiet street below, ordinary, imperfect, real. Somewhere along the way, she had stopped being a passenger in her own life. She had taken the wheel. At noon she went back to the studio alone. It wasn't that she didn't want Harper there, she did, but today needed to be her own proof. She sat at the piano, closed her eyes, and recorded one last song. A quiet track, barely more than voice and keys. A love letter not to someone else, but to the woman she had finally chosen to become. When she finished, she leaned back and laughed softly. It wasn't perfect, but neither was she. That was the point. She collected the tracks, compressed them into a folder titled simply Marin. No stage name, no brand, just her. Her manager called again. She ignored it. She spent the afternoon walking the city, stopping at bookstores and small vintage shops, letting herself be just a woman in jeans and sneakers rather than Marin the image. Somewhere between the used paperbacks and dusty vinyl bins, she realized she could breathe here. She was free. As sunset dipped low in the sky, she finally texted Harper. Are you home? A second later, yep. Do you want me to come over? No. Can I come to you? Harper sent an address and a heart she pretended was a minimalist. 15 minutes later, Marin knocked on a small apartment door in East Nashville. Harper opened it, hair messy, holding a wooden spoon and wearing the expression of someone caught mid-experiment. You cook? Marin teased. I try. Tonight is pasta. It may be food or a threat to national safety. We'll see. Marin stepped inside, soaking in the space. Guitars on the wall. A piano in the corner. Fairy lights strung across a window. A half-made lyric sheet on the coffee table. It was cozy, unpolished, lived in Anne Very Harper. Harper stirred the saucepan again, then glanced at her with a soft smile. You look lighter today. Marin sat on a stool at the kitchen counter. I recorded something. The last song. Harper's eyebrows lifted. And? I think I finally wrote from the person I am, not the one I pretended to be. Harper set the spoon down, eyes warm. That's the version of you I always hoped you'd let the world see. Marin swallowed, unexpectedly emotional. What if the world doesn't like her? Harper shook her head gently. Then the world can catch up. You don't dim to make strangers comfortable. Silence settled between them, comfortable, weighted, meaningful. Harper plated the pasta and poured red wine into two mismatched glasses. To new chapters, she said. To choosing them, Marin answered. They ate, laughed, traded stories, Harper describing her first disastrous open mic. Marin mocking the time she lip-synced by accident after tripping over a stage monitor. Halfway through the meal, Harper leaned her chin in her hand. You know, when I first met you in that bar, I thought you were too put together for me. Marin blinked. Seriously? You had that expensive sadness about you. The kind people learn to hide like a luxury coat. Marin laughed softly. And now? Harper tilted her head. Now you look like someone who can start again without apologizing. That hit deeper than Marin expected. She set her fork down. I want to tell you something. Harper waited. I don't know what the future looks like. I don't know if I'm done healing, or if I'll slip sometimes, or if there are still pieces I haven't discovered yet. But I know this meeting you changed something in me. Not because you told me how to be, but because you showed me I could be. Harper's eyes softened. You did that yourself. I was just lucky enough to witness it. Marin took a breath, steady and brave. And I think, I'd like to see where this goes. If you want to. Harper didn't kiss her immediately. Instead, she stepped closer, brushed a hand along Marin's cheek and said, I want to go anywhere you're ready to go. Just don't lose yourself again along the way. Marin exhaled shakily and whispered, I won't. Harper kissed her, then slow, warm, patient, like something blooming rather than erupting. No fireworks. No whirlwind. Just truth. For the first time, Marin felt what it was like to be kissed as the person she truly was, not the one she had been told to be. Later, they curled together on the couch, Harper's head resting on Marin's shoulder. Soft music played from a record player in the corner, something vintage and folky, worn from years of use. Harper traced circles on Marin's hand. So what happens now? Marin smiled. I released the music. Not to make it famous. Just to set it free. Harper nodded approvingly. And us? Marin looked down at their intertwined fingers. We take our time. We built something real. Something that doesn't need hiding. Harper grinned. Slow is my specialty. Around 11, Marin stood to leave. Harper walked her to the door, fingers brushing, not wanting to pull away yet. You okay? Harper asked. Better than I've ever been. And she meant it. Outside, the night air was cool, fragrant with honeysuckle from someone's overgrown fence. Marin walked to her car with a strange sense of déjà vu of something repeated, but something finally right. She paused before getting in and looked up at the sky. Quiet. Alive. Full of stars. One chapter had ended on a hotel floor with mascara smears and betrayal. Another had begun with a bar, a guitar, and a stranger who saw her before she even saw herself. But the real story, the one worth singing, was the one she wrote the moment she stood up from the ashes of her old life and whispered, I choose me. A few weeks later, her first independent EP dropped online without marketing or noise. No label. No press push. Just music. The response stunned her. Messages poured in, not about chart numbers but about resonance. About women who left bad marriages. Women who came out at 30, 40, 60. Women who wrote that Marin made them feel seen. For the first time in her life, her voice mattered because it was hers. One evening, she sat on Harper's porch swing as the sun dipped behind the rooftops. Harper set down 2 glasses of iced tea and kissed her hair. How's it feel to be heard? Marin leaned against her, content. Like I finally learned the melody of my own life. Harper smiled. And I'm not singing it alone anymore. They sat in quiet, the sky turning peach and lavender, cicadas humming in the trees. No drama. No shattering moment. Just peace. Just love grown from truth instead of performance. Marin took Harper's hand. Thank you for being there. Harper shook her head. You don't thank someone for walking beside you. You just keep walking. So they did. 2 women. 2 journeys. One love found not in chaos, but in choosing themselves first. The world could chase its spotlights. Marin had already found her light. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.